All right, the bell hath tolled 1800 Central Daylight Time on this 30th day of March, Anno Domini 2025. So we will get started. If you want to go up and if you want to turn the master down a little bit, somebody can hop up and do that. That'd be great. Master volume down a little bit. Is that what you're saying, Jonna? Okay. All right, well, now it is 6:01, and so we will get started. We have concluded the stories of the judges, the characters of the judges, but there is more content of the book of Judges for us to process, digest, because the last several chapters of this book, the author wants to really let us know the conditions of the people at large during the period of the judges. Okay, so my goal tonight is to get through 3 chapters. I know that's kind of crazy. Last week we did. If we can get through 3 chapters of Samson, we can get through 3 chapters of this. So we'll see how far we can get, because I really would love to address the book of Ruth on the 13th. The 13th is our final night together for this class. We have 3 more nights. Tonight, the 6th, and the 13th. So I'd love to look at the book of Ruth the final night. So we'll see if we can get through 3 chapters. So who would like to open us up in a brief word of prayer, and then we'll jump on in? All right, Pastor, thank you.
Heavenly Father, thank you, Lord, for this chance we have to have this class. Thank you, Father, for your servant who is presenting the material. I pray that you'll bless him and use him, speak through him. Father, please use your word to do a mighty work in our lives, and may you be magnified through it all. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. All right, Judges 17, we'll pick it up in. And we are going to attempt, if we can get through the 3 chapters, 2 events that happen that the author of Judges really wants to show us how, bad the spiritual condition has gotten in Israel. We've seen judges of various regions of the country, from various tribes and their ministries. We are going to see a couple of events that happen out of a certain tribe in Israel, which, if we see that tribe really going downhill morally, it's gotten really bad. Because there was a certain tribe in Israel that was to be spread throughout the land and teach the people the law and help guide them into righteous living. And if this tribe is, in some ways, it's like the last line of defense. If this tribe falls apart, it's all over. Okay. So, Judges 17, we will start. Will somebody read for us to set the stage, verses 1 through 6? All right. Thank you, buddy. All right, now finally we come to this kind of theme verse of all of Judges. The first time we see it is in chapter 17, verse 6, but it really describes the whole time period. Let's start with that. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. As we know later in history, the people will request, strongly demand Samuel to appoint a king over them so somebody could fight their battles for them, could have some central authority and some more organization out of this chaotic 12-tribe stuff. And we talked about how that didn't pop up out of a vacuum. I mean, there would have been, as we've seen with the judges, some of them started living kind of royal lifestyles. There would have been that feeling of like, oh man, here we go again, getting run over by another foreign people. If only we had a king. So it wasn't a completely faithless and bad desire. Besides, God had always had kingship in mind, that he would be their king, for one. But he had revealed earlier anyway that there would be a king of some good sort over Israel. The concept of king over Israel was not bad at all. It was the people's desires of what they wanted out of that. So Samuel had to warn them what would come about. Now, when was Judges written and who wrote it? It just doesn't say. So we're left to, we need some clues. And I think there are a few clues throughout the book of Judges that place the time of the writing early in the monarchy. Perhaps during Saul's reign or towards the end of Saul's reign. At latest, maybe early David's reign before he had taken Jerusalem. So some potential authors might be Nathan the prophet, Gad the seer, those type of court spiritual leaders. There's a lot of tradition that assumes Samuel himself wrote it. Okay, we don't know who wrote it. It's probably early in the monarchy. And this person, to say something like this, in those days there was no king in Israel. Can you imagine how chaotic it would be without a king? Even if it's Saul during that time. Saul, strangely, always holds a little soft place in my heart. I know. Saul's great failures notwithstanding, there were some positive, effective aspects of his reign. Even a little bit spiritually positive, but mostly not. Mostly it was in terms of administration, organization. He really did he brought the people together. Okay? God did under Saul's reign. Okay, so for the author to look back, in those days there was no king in Israel. Everybody's doing what's right in his own eyes. If you don't have that central leader, it's just going to be the Wild West, right? And so everybody's doing what's right in their own eyes. So he starts with this. A man of the hill country of Ephraim. On our map, I only did the pins that we're going to look at today, so we're not like flooded with pins. But here's the tribes map. Okay, Ephraim, central hill country of Ephraim. Okay, the man whose name was Micah said to his mother, "Hey, there's 1,100 pieces of silver that was stolen from you. You pronounced a curse on whoever stole it. I confess I took it. Maybe he, guilty conscience, or he's afraid of whatever curse she uttered. I took it." And his mother then says, "Blessed be my son by the Lord." Okay, she just pronounced a curse on whoever took this. Now she's going back on that. She's like, okay, she's wishy-washy at best. "Behold, the silver was with me. I took it," the guy said. So he restored the 1,100 pieces of silver to his mother. So she said, "I'm going to give this to the poor because I'm so happy I got it back." "No, I dedicate the silver to the Lord from my hand for my son." Sounds good, right? I dedicate this silver to God. I'm going to give it right back to him. Sounds pretty good so far. "To make a carved image and a metal image. I'm going to use this silver that you restored to me to make some idols out of it." Okay, what an interesting use of money that you are claiming to dedicate to the Lord, to Yahweh. I'm going to make a carved image and a metal image, violating that second commandment. And the point of the second commandment is you're not supposed to make an image of anything under the heaven or the earth that you would use as an idol, and to prevent you from falling down, getting trapped up in idolatry, okay? An image of a physical thing, the second commandment talks about you should not make yourself any graven images, okay? God even instructed in the construction of the temple, make these pomegranate-shaped stuff, so it wasn't like, some people think you're not supposed to do any art of any image of anything in the Jewish mind, whatever, but the point was nothing that you would use in the course of idolatry, no graven images. That was the point. Everybody else around you is falling down in idolatry and they're making gods out of wood and stone. You're not to do that. She is doing that with this silver. So when he restored the money to his mother, she took 200 pieces, gave it to a silversmith, who made it into a carved image. So here's the silversmith in Israel who's just like, whatever, just pay me. I don't care. I'll make whatever you want. I'll make an idol for you. And it was set up in the house of Micah. He had a shrine. He made an ephod, household gods, and ordained one of his sons who became his priest. What's the problem with that? Don't you want your children to go into ministry? He's not a Levite. Okay. He was not to just install his son as priest. There was a divinely ordained system of who would be a priest. That's why the author says, in those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. Not everyone did what was right according to his conviction of the Scriptures. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. This is good to me. Remember Samson. Get me that woman because she's right in my eyes. I like her, so get her for me. I don't care what you think, mom and dad, dishonoring his parents. So that's the setting. Now, there was a young man meanwhile, there was a young man of Bethlehem in Judah. So we're going down to Judah. Bethlehem is just 6 miles south of Jerusalem. Go to Ruth's for lunch if you ever go there. I highly endorse it. It's great food, great coffee. Of course, it's named Ruth's. Why wouldn't it be? Now, he's of the family of Judah, who was a Levite. So this guy is a Levite, and he sojourned in Bethlehem. Problem. Bethlehem is not one of the Levite cities. He's just going wherever he wants to go, and he's sojourning there for a while. He's going to prove himself to be a priest for hire. Okay, another thing you are not supposed to do under the law. So many laws are being broken here left and right, that if we don't really appreciate how God set things up, we're just reading this as like kind of, daily life, whatever. I mean, yeah, I don't like the carved image type stuff, but okay, so this guy is from Bethlehem. What's the big deal? There's all sorts of little indicators that show everyone's doing what's right in their own eyes. They're just not careful to follow the law, to follow God's revealed word and plan of doing things, okay? And the man departed from the town of Bethlehem in Judah to sojourn where he could find a place. I'm just going to go somewhere else. I've had it with Bethlehem. Ruth's is closed on Saturdays. That's my favorite place to eat. I'm going to go somewhere else. So he goes to find a place. As he journeyed, he came to the hill country of Ephraim. He's going north, probably along the Watershed Ridge route that we'll look at later. And he's settling up here. He came to the house of Micah, just kind of randomly, and Micah said to him, "Hey, where'd you come from?" He said to him, "I'm a Levite of Bethlehem in Judah, and I'm going to sojourn where I may find a place." So Micah said to him, "Hey, stay with me and be to me a father and a priest. And I will give you 10 pieces of silver a year and a suit of clothes and your living. You can live with me, your lodging included, so you get a housing allowance, 10 pieces of silver, some new threads." And so the Levite went in. Sure, that sounds like a good deal to me. I could sojourn here. He's hooking me up. The Levite was content to dwell with the man, and the young man became to him like one of his sons. Well, what about his other son that he set up as a priest? Sorry, I found somebody better. Forget you. You're done. And Micah ordained the Levite. He has no right to do this. And the young man became his priest and was in the house of Micah. Then Micah said, because everyone's doing what's right in their own eyes, they get to just kind of make up how God must approve of things. Now I know that the Lord will prosper me because I have a Levite as priest. This is amazing. Not just any priest, not my son, not my rat son anymore. He's not even a Levite. Now I have a real live Levite as my priest. God is going to bless me. I got my magic talisman here, my good luck charm. This is going to be awesome. I've made my idols, my household gods. I'm set up. Mom didn't even curse me to death. I smoothed that over with her. This is awful. This is chaos. This is not walking carefully according to the scriptures that they had in their possession at that time. They're flaunting it. They don't care how God wants them to live. They want to live how they want to live, including at least this Levite. Okay, something about the Levites. All priests were Levites. Not all Levites were priests. Okay? The descendants of Levi, the son of Jacob, were to be spread throughout the land and teach people the law. The actual priests that would do this, oversee the services of the tabernacle and temple later, they were supposed to be descended from who? Aaron. Okay, only Aaron's line could actually be priests. There are Levites, and they had their responsibilities in the tribe of Levi. But only the line of Aaron could be priests. We discover who this guy is in a little bit. He's not of the line of Aaron. Okay, so he has, even a Levite, he has no right to be priest. And so now Micah thinks he's hooked up. That's a short chapter, chapter 17. Sets the scenario. Any questions or thoughts on that? Micah didn't care. Whatever city this guy's from, he left to sojourn wherever he thought that it could go well for him. He's not staying where he should have been. If you're a Levite and you're born into your family, your dad's like, generations on high, we've been in this town and this is where God has us. Great, this is where I'm going to live then. Now, we read this as Christians in 2025, chapter 17 of Judges, like, oh, okay, this is a Bible story, whatever. And it really doesn't, I mean, obviously our hankles are raised when we're like, oh, idols, that's not good. But if you are a Jew, when this is being written, the early monarchy, and you're reading this, you're like, wow. All of that is going on. This is bad. Even the Levites now are playing fast and loose with the law. They're just guns for hire. This is not good at all. Good thing we're the monarch. Good thing we have a king, because this is bad. This can't stand this chaos. Now, did it have to be this way? Even though the time of the judges, they didn't have a king, did it still have to be this way? We've been studying all spring the book of Judges. It was that way. It didn't have to be. Remember, during Joshua and the elders' generation, more or less, you did have a good spiritual condition of Israel. As long as Joshua lived and the elders with him, as long as they lived, more or less, you had Israel representing God and living for him. Never perfectly, of course. But then right away, as we start the book of Judges, it's a litany of failures of all the tribes. After Joshua and the elders died off, they even have idols set up at Gilgal. That's the very next generation. That's awful, and that's why God kept selling them into the hands of their enemies. And so now that we're done with Samson and all the specific judges, the author wants to give us, and here's some examples of how bad it got. Now, also, the chapters we're looking at tonight happened early on in the time period of the judges, probably like during Othniel's ministry. And he was the first judge we saw. And there's some certain indicators, temporal indicators that revealed to us this is going on early. So the book of Judges, the author gives us, here's what happened here in this region, and then this guy generally chronologically, one after another, although they overlap. Well, now he's like, now that I talked about all the judges and ended with Samson, now I want to tell you some individual stories of what happened even early on in this time period to show you it's been bad the whole time. Okay? Yeah, it seems like it was a downward spiral and got worse and worse. I think the author might want to remind us it was always bad. Okay, throughout the time of the judges, after Joshua and the elders died off, how quickly the people fell into idolatry and loose living. Yeah, because there was no king, but really because they were not sold out for God at all. All right. Now it's chapter 17. Good? Micah's story continues here, and now we bring in a certain tribe that is not going to come away smelling very good. Chapter 18. How about, somebody read verses 1 through 6 of this chapter as well. Yeah, thank you, Gigi. Okay, no king in Israel in those days, of course. Now in those days, the tribe of the people of Dan was seeking for itself an inheritance to dwell in. Why were they seeking for themselves an inheritance to dwell in? Joshua forgot about us. Man, he gave everybody else, outlined what cities they were supposed to have. Man, he forgot about us. We need to seek a place to live. Remember chapter 1 and 2 in Judges. This tribe failed to dislodge the Canaanites. This tribe failed. This tribe failed. This tribe failed. This tribe failed. Dan also failed to dislodge the Canaanites. Remember, because they had chariots of iron. We can't possibly defeat the chariots of iron. Oh, man, we're out of luck. If only God had given us a better place. Dan, dislodge those Canaanites and take your land. That's what God gave to you. Sorry, Daniel, I know. It's not often that the tribe of Dan really has anything, frankly, good to be said about them in the scriptures. Now, you had Manoah and his wife, Samson, his parents. They were great. I know what it's like to have a namesake. Everybody blames me for everything. Pulling the world into sin and all that. Okay. Little chemistry joke for you. Okay. You can trust the second Adam wholeheartedly, as we all do. Okay. Now, Dan is seeking for itself an inheritance. They're giving up. They're like, we're out of here, man. It's too hard. We're gone. Now, apparently, Samson's parents were left behind. They stayed behind. Another mark of their faithfulness, right? Because they stayed behind in Zorah and Eshtaol. Remember the city of Zorah, the town of Zorah is where Samson's dad was from. Okay, so the people of Dan, they're going to travel north, and right away as they leave their allotted territory, they come across Micah's house. They send 5 able men to spy out where they might settle. And they say, go and explore the land. They came to Micah's house, lodged there. When they were by the house of Micah, they recognized the voice of the young Levite. He probably had a Judean accent. This Levite was talking like, hey, I'm so happy to be here. You've taken me in here. And they're like, oh, you're from Judah, aren't you? So they turned aside and they said, who brought you here? What are you doing in this place? Like, why are you up here? You're not from around here. What is your business here? Oh, this is how Micah's dealt with me. He's been so great. He's hired me. I've become his priest. This is awesome. I said, a priest, you say? Whoa, inquire of God that we may know whether the journey on which we're setting out will succeed. Man, we'd love his endorsement. And the priest said to them, go in peace. The journey on which you go is under the eye of the Lord. Basically like, hey, sure, the Lord's all for it. You think the Lord would have been all for this? You think the Lord telling the Danites, take this territory, a very good and fertile territory, do you think the Lord would be like, fine, yeah, you can go up. You can leave. No, of course not. So they weren't following the Lord's will. The Levite was just tickling their ears. Be like, sure, go. Your way will be blessed. Yeah, it's under the eye of the Lord. Why not? Nobody's really bothering to actually search the scriptures. So the 5 men departed. They came to Laish. Laish, it's one of my favorite places to visit in the scriptures. We're traveling north. We're flying. We're going up to Laish. Oh, but I have it called Dan here. Yeah, you might know the rest of the story. Laish it's an awesome, awesome place. It's remarkable for its archaeology. Under this roof, if we have time, probably not. We'll pull up pictures. I'll show you. If you were in the geography class, you saw a lot of pictures of Dan. Remarkably preserved gate complex around here that you can see what the gate was like in an Old Testament city. Under this roof they call it Abraham's Gate, because it was the Canaanitic gate, mud brick gate, that Abraham approached when he's rescuing Lot and the 4 kings from the hands of the 5 kings. He went as far as the gates of Dan, and that's preserved under this roof. It's under the roof because it's mud bricks. It just deteriorates in the rain. North side of Dan, you have where Jeroboam set up, back here, set up on this platform right back here, the golden calf. As far as Dan and Bethel they went, and this is priestly chambers up here. This is Jeroboam's false system of, I think it was attempting to be Yahweh worship, but it was a false method of doing it. None too pleased God was. He compared all the northern kings that came after Jeroboam to Jeroboam. You're like Jeroboam who caused Israel to sin. This is bad. Fascinating to visit. Cool place to visit. Sad that it ever was built in the first place. But Dan is just, it's awesome. And it's nice and cool up there. The trees are beautiful. Nice nature walk. It's fantastic. And the springs that pop out of Dan help to fill the Jordan River, and it starts up here. And Syria and Lebanon are right here. Right at Dan, there's the borders of these three countries. And so it's just a great place to visit. Anyway, the Danites went and visited here because it was called Laish at the time. They saw the people who were there, how they lived in security after the manner of the Sidonians. Sidonians up here. Sidonians. They lived after the manner of the Sidonians. They're just at peace. They're lacking nothing. Quiet and unsuspecting, lacking nothing that's in the earth, possessing wealth. And how they were far from the Sidonians. This actually isn't far as the crow flies, but it's far because you got the Lebanon mountain range here. And if trouble was to come to Dan, the Sidonians would not be able to come quickly to help him, as we'll see. And they had no dealings with anyone because they're so secluded up here in paradise. It's just great living up there. Now, if you're the 5 members of the tribe of Dan and you see this, what are you thinking? You're licking your lips. Ooh, they have a lot. This is a great place to live. They're unsuspecting. They don't have anybody to help them out. If we were to, So they saw this. They returned to their brothers at Zorah and Eshtaol. Their brothers said to him, "What do you report?" And they said, "Arise, let us go up against him. For we've seen the land, and behold, it is very good. And will you do nothing? Do not be slow to go to enter in and possess the land. As soon as you go, you'll come up to an unsuspecting people. The land is spacious, for God has given it into your hands, a place where there is no lack of anything that is in the earth." Like, we can't say enough good things. This is God's country. It's also just so happens to be in the tribe of Naphtali. But we don't care about that. We're going to go up and take it. This is awesome. We found the best place to live. Now, 600 men of the tribe of Dan, armed with weapons of war, set out from Zorah and Eshtaol. So they're like, yes, we got it. This is a great report. We're going to set out and we're going to take it. What better place could there be? We don't have to worry about the chariots of iron and the Canaanites anymore. We're gone. They went up and they encamped at Kiriath Jearim in Judah, which is right up here. And it's just downhill from Jerusalem. Funny, okay, at the base of Kiriath Jearim, I've always got a kick out of this, and we've driven by it several times. There is a sizable Elvis museum here. Where is it? Because we would always, at Yad HaShmonah, we'd be up here and we'd look across the valley at Kiriath Jearim. I've never been to the hill of Kiriath Jearim, but I've been right here. And there's a big Elvis restaurant right around here. It's just funny. They love it. Anyway, they encamp at Kiriath Jearim, and later, this is where the ark would rest after it was at Beth Shemesh, and they improperly messed around with it. A lot of people died there. So then the ark was left deposited at Kiriath Jearim, and the caretaker there was blessed by the Lord greatly. He obviously cared for it. Later, David came and took the ark from Kiriath Jearim to bring it down to Jerusalem, or up, over to Jerusalem. So they camped there. It's called Menahah Dan, the camp of Dan to this day. It's just west of Kiriath Jearim. So the camp of Dan probably was on one of these hilltops that stood on a few times. And they passed on from there to the hill country of Ephraim and came to who else? The house of Micah. Wow, what are the odds? Okay, there's a reason why they come back to the house of Micah on their way up to take over Laish. Why do you think? They want that priest. He said that our quest is under the eye of the Lord. How awesome would it be to have our own Levite as we go up and start a new life? That would be awesome. Somebody read 14 to 20 so we can have another voice here. Laish. Yep, that's good. Thank you very much. Okay, first, the Hula Basin on your way up to Dan. It's just beautiful, wide open country, unsuspecting people. They lack nothing. They have all the birds they could handle. It is, by the way, the busiest migratory bird path in the world, for whoever cares about that. Hula Basin, beautiful area. Kadesh Naphtali, Abu Ma'aka, we can cruise through that because I want to get to Dan. This is Dan. This is beautiful. Just what a wonderful place. There is Jeroboam ahead of his time. He had aluminum cast there. No, that was where his altar was. And they just plopped that over to give you a sense of the size that the altar was. But all these other stones, they're left over from the day that they were having their sacrifices up there. This platform held the golden calf. I looked around, looked for as many gold scraps as I could find. None. They've picked the place clean. None left. But this is what you would approach. You would bring your sacrifice to the priest. They'd come and slaughter it. You would probably do pretty much the same stuff you would have done in Jerusalem at the temple. It's just Jeroboam set up places so people wouldn't go to the temple anymore. That enraged God a lot. Okay, he was not endorsing that. That's overlooking the mountains of Syria from Dan. This is the walkway from that place down to the gates. These are the city gates of Dan. The gates would have been right there. You had to come up here, turn left, come in there, turn left. So like if you're trying to take over a city, you're constantly twisting and turning, and the archers are picking you off from above. It's also where they found, off over here, the Tel Dan stele. A Bema seat. Every place had them. All the gate complexes had a Bema seat. The pomegranate carvings down here, and the elder would sit up there on his high chair, and he would pronounce judgments, as Pilate did later in his city. Dan, standing stones at Dan. We don't like to see that, but there they are on the gate. You would set up stones that represent your gods in the gate complexes. And yeah, even in the city of Israel, they had them. This is where the Tel Dan stele was found. This commemorates that. Abraham's gate. You walk up, and there it is. Abraham was at this gate. Apparently, at some point, it had been sealed off, but with Canaanitic mud bricks. Somebody sealed it off at some point. They have it covered, of course, because you see how the rains would just eat away at this over time. But there it is, still from 4,000 years ago. It's amazing. So that's Dan. All right, Caesarea Philippi for another day. Okay, so as Michelle read, the Danites came and they wanted this Levite. And they have quite a show of force. 600 men of the Danites armed with their weapons of war. Yikes. They took Micah's stuff, his carved image, his ephod, his household gods, and the priest said, "What are you doing? Keep quiet. Hey, put your hand on your mouth." Basically, shut up. Don't you want to come with us and be a father and a priest? Is it better for you to be a priest in the house of one man or to be priest to a tribe and clan of Israel? Like, you're going to be the high priest of the bishop of Dan. Like, this is going to be great for you. We're offering you a huge promotion. If you leave your current position, come with us. We'll make it worth your while. And the priest's heart was glad. Hey, okay, if you're living for your life in this world, yeah, your heart's going to be glad. He took the ephod, the household gods, and went along with the people. So they turned and departed, putting the little ones and the livestock and the goods in front of them, like this whole tribe is going. Well, many of the tribe are going. When they'd gone a distance from the home of Micah, the men who were in the houses near Micah's house were called out, and they overtook the people of Dan, like they caught up to them. And they shouted to the people of Dan, who turned around and said to Micah, "What's the matter with you that you come with such a company? Like, why are you chasing us?" He said, you take my gods that I made and the priest, and you go away? What do I have left?" That shows a pathetic state right there, too. If what you're living for is idolatry and the stuff of the world, yeah, what do you have left? You don't have your relationship with Yahweh, that's for sure. But how do you ask, "What's the matter with you? What do you think my matter is?" The people of Dan said to him, "Do not let your voice be heard among us, lest angry fellows fall upon you." Like, you're taking your life in your own hands if you keep this up. a nice life you have there. It sure would be bad if you lost it somehow. You'll lose your life with the lives of your household. Leave us alone. Then the people of Dan went their way. When Micah saw that they were too strong for him, he just turned and went back to his home. At least he has enough sense in his head to know when he's been defeated. But the people of Dan took what Micah had made, and the priests who belonged to him that came to Laish, to a people quiet and unsuspecting, struck them with the edge of the sword, burned the city with fire. Ooh. And there was no deliverer because it was too far from Sidon. It was over the mountains. Again, not super far in distance, but just too far away that the Sidonians, who were apparently allied with them, couldn't really do anything about it. They had no dealings with anyone. It was in the valley that belongs to Beth Rehob. Then they rebuilt the city and lived in it, and they named the city Dan. Ah, there it is. After the name of Dan, their ancestor, who was born to Israel, born to Jacob. But the name of the city was Laish at first. And the people of Dan set up the carved image for themselves. Dan has a rich history of idolatry here, carved images. What better place for Jeroboam to set up a golden calf? And here now we get his, I think this is the priest. And Jonathan, the son of Gershom, and if it wasn't bad enough of how far people have fallen, the son of Gershom, the son of, it's hard for me to even say the word, dare I even, Moses. Moses would have had none of this garbage. And his sons were priests to the tribe of the Danites until the day of the captivity of the land. Okay. That could be a tricky reference depending on when this was written. So they set up Micah's carved image that he made as long as the house of God was at Shiloh. This could have been a scribal edition afterwards, later in time, which does not violate at all the veracity of the scriptures. This could have been a later edition by a copyist that said, hey, you know, they've been priests to the Danites until the day of the captivity of the land. Maybe the Assyrian captivity, we don't know. But as long as the house of God was in Shiloh, they were. Now, this still would work out, actually, if this was a guy writing in Saul's time period. Like, as long as the tabernacle was at Shiloh, as long throughout the whole period of the judges, Micah's carved image was there. Eesh. And maybe that's until Saul would have come and forced him to take it down. He did some things like that in a good way. Now, I wanted to leave some time for chapter 19, but that's 17 and 18. That's the story of Micah, his Levite, and the Danites. Any thoughts or questions about that? Yes. There's a thought that it might have been a copyist in an effort perhaps, in a good-natured effort perhaps, to take heat off of Moses, because perish the thought that he might have added a noon to make it Manasseh instead of Moshe. That's one thought. It seems the best textual evidence has Moses. It might have been some copyists like, I don't want Moses to have anything to be, perish the thought his name would be dragged into this mud. I'm going to change it to Manasseh. Some copyists would do that. I don't know that I would have the compunction to be like, I'm just going to change the scriptures here to make it better. You don't do that. The better textual evidence is Moses is how it should read. And so if there was some other scribal tradition that's like, I'm just going to try to take heat off of Moses, not advisable to add to this book or take anything away from it. That's why that footnote is there. Because some texts read Manasseh, but that's probably why. Moses is the best reading. And Gershom was a son of Moses. Jonathan, son of Gershom, son of Moses. If they kind of had long lives, his grandson, very early in the period of the judges. Son of Gershom could be descendant of Gershom. Oftentimes, the Hebrew scriptures do read that way. Son of could be grandson, great-grandson, great-great-grandson. That's why it can be a little tricky dealing with lineages. But this is a descendant of Moses. Not a descendant of Aaron, Moses' brother, which would have been more rightly priestly line. This is a descendant of Moses, even though a Levite, not an authorized priest. As great as Moses was, his line was not to be priest. It's all willy-nilly. It's all helter-skelter. It's all everybody doing what's right in their own eyes because there's no king in Israel. Okay. It gets really interesting in chapter 19. I don't remember, I wasn't saved till I was 17, so I didn't grow up in a Bible-believing church. Who teaches kids in this church? Have you gone through Judges 19 lately with them? Okay. Put it on your schedule. All right. It's not. Well, consult the pastor of this church and see if he wants you to add it to the children's curriculum. But again, we don't add to nor take away from the scriptures here. So we're covering it. And it does go to show really how awful things were in this day and age, in this time. So, chapter 19, here we go. Buckle up. Buckle up. In those days there was no king in Israel. A certain Levite, here we have another Levite, was sojourning in the remote parts of the hill country of Ephraim. Probably not the same. But here was another Levite who was sojourning in the remote parts of the hill country of Ephraim, who took to himself a concubine from Bethlehem in Judah. We have another connection between Ephraim and Bethlehem. Again, different instance going on here, different people. He takes a concubine from Bethlehem in Judah, and the Hebrew word is best probably translated as concubine, not a full wife, but some lesser wife or something of how they viewed it. Who knows what quality of husband he was to this concubine, but his concubine was unfaithful to him. He probably wasn't super faithful to her. This is just, remember, there's no king. She went away from him. I don't know what this pop-up is, and I don't want it. She went away from him to her father's house at Bethlehem in Judah. So she goes home back to dad. Apparently she just was not satisfied with that relationship. I'm going home. And was there some 4 months. Then her husband arose and went after her, with flowers and chocolates and everything, to speak kindly to her and bring her back. I shouldn't have treated her so bad. I had it good with her. I'll try to get her back. He had with him his servant and a couple of donkeys, and she brought him into her father's house. And when the girl's father saw him, he came with joy to meet him. Apparently, dad liked him. And his father-in-law, the girl's father, made him stay, and he remained with him 3 days. And don't forget your name, ever. So they ate and drank and spent the night there. On the 4th day they arose early in the morning, and he prepared to go. But, as was often the case, Middle Eastern hospitality, my friend, you stay longer, my friend. On the 4th day they were going to go, but the girl's father said to his son-in-law, strengthen your heart with a morsel of bread, and after that you may go. So why don't you stay longer, please? So the two of them sat and ate and drank together. And the girl's father said to the man, be pleased to spend the night and let your heart be merry. Why are you going in such a hurry? Stay. When the man rose up to go, his father-in-law pressed him till he spent the night there again. On the 5th day he arose early in the morning to depart. The girl's father said, strengthen your heart, wait till the day declines. So they ate, both of them. And when the man and his concubine and his servant rose up to depart, his father-in-law, the girl's father, said to him, behold, now the day is waned towards the evening. It's getting late. Please spend the night. Behold, the day draws to its close. Lodge here and let your heart be merry, and tomorrow you shall arise early in the morning for your journey and go home. But the man would not spend the night. He's like, no, I'm done. We're gone. He rose up and departed and arrived opposite Jebus. That is Jerusalem. We're going to take a little trip. We're going from Bethlehem along the watershed ridge route that I talked about in the geography class. He's going up this way, along this highway, because you know what? It's nice and paved for him. And he takes a right here in this road and goes up this way. And he comes along to Jebus. Now, he's on the watershed ridge. I know all these modern buildings get in the way. The valley would have been more pronounced here between the hill that Jebus or Jerusalem sat on and the watershed ridge route that you traveled north and south on. Okay, he arrived opposite of Jebus, that is Jerusalem. He's up here. He had with him a couple of saddled donkeys, and his concubine was with him. When they were near Jebus, the day was nearly over, and the servant said to his master, come now, let us turn aside to this city of the Jebusites and spend the night in it. And his master said to him, we will not turn aside into the city of foreigners. I will not stay there. All their hotels have bad ratings on Yelp. Okay, we're not going to go there to a city of foreigners who do not belong to the people of Israel. I would never. But we will pass on to Gibeah. Gibeah is only a few miles further. I would not deign myself to stay in some dangerous, sloppy city of the Jebusites. It'd be much better for us to stay in an Israelite city. God, aren't you thinking? Come on. Let's go and pass on to Gibeah. All right, we'll keep going north. You see how close Gibeah is? So it's like, let's just a little bit longer. It's not too far. We'll get there. It's an Israelite city. We'll be much better off in Gibeah. How ironic. He should have stayed in Jerusalem, or Jebus. Okay, and he said to his young man, come and let us draw near to one of these places and spend the night either at Gibeah or somewhere like at Ramah. Ramah's just a little further up. Like if we have enough energy, let's continue there, but we can stop at Gibeah if we need to. There's a Buc-ee's there. You always stop where there's a Buc-ee's. He went in and sat down in the open square of the city, for no one took them into his house to spend the night. There's strike one there. Nobody's hospitable enough to take you in. And behold, an old man was coming from his work in the field at evening. The man was from the hill country of Ephraim, and he was sojourning in Gibeah. The men of the place were Benjaminites. And he lifted up his eyes and saw the traveler in the open square of the city. And he's like, I remember Lot. I remember Sodom. Where are you going and where are you coming from? And he said to him, we're passing from Bethlehem in Judah to the remote parts of the hill country in Ephraim, from which I come. Hey, I'm an Ephraimite too. Oh, this is amazing. I went to Bethlehem in Judah, and I'm going to the house of the Lord. All right, he's going up to Shiloh. But no one has taken me into his house. We have straw and feed for our donkeys, with bread and wine for me and your female servant and the young man with your servants. There's no lack of anything, this guy is telling him. The old man is telling him, hey, we have it all. The old man said, peace be to you. I will care for all your wants. Only do not spend the night in the square. I know what goes on in the square. You don't want to spend the night here. So he brought him into his house and gave the donkeys feed, and they washed their feet and ate and drank. So far, so good. This is great. They found hospitality from a nice man. This is awesome. They don't have to spend the night in the square. This is great. As they were making their hearts merry, behold, the men of the city, worthless fellows, wicked men of the rabble, worthless fellows, sons of Belial, the Hebrew text says. They must have seen this guy roll into town with his young servant, his concubine. They were beating on the door. They said to the old man, the master of the house, bring out the man who came into your house that we may know him. You know what that means. And the man, the master of the house, went out to meet them and said to them, of course, thinking hospitality. This guy actually showed hospitality. And the forefront of his mind was focused on be hospitable to people. That was a very important thing. Even in the Middle East now, it's of utmost importance. Hospitality was a huge thing. Now this guy, I'm going to go a little overboard with it, but he's thinking, I need to be hospitable to my guests. They're under my roof. I need to protect them at all costs. Okay, that's his motive. In and of itself, a fine motive. But we'll see what happens. He said, no, my brothers, do not act so wickedly. Since this man has come into my house, do not do this vile thing. Behold, here's my virgin daughter and his concubine. Let me bring them out now. Violate them and do with them what seems good to you. But against this man, do not do this outrageous thing. The floor is yours. What do you think about this? Okay. Yeah, clearly this guy is really seeing these girls as just property. You might as well just, he says, violate them. Not my guest, not this man. Don't you dare. I couldn't have that on my conscience. Here's my virgin daughter, and here's his concubine. Go to town. That's awful. We're reminded of Sodom and Gomorrah, right? That's not a one-off. This is how people in the depths of their sin operate. I'm sure, besides Sodom in this instance, it probably happened more often than we'd like to think about. But the men would not listen to him. Apparently, they really wanted the guy. So the man, this wandering Levite, seized his concubine and made her go out to them. He's probably thinking, I wouldn't want your virgin daughter to experience this. Hey, you, get out there. You've cheated on me once already. Who cares? We don't know everything that's going through his head. Take the girl, leave me alone. Wow, what a hero. It could be to show irony, maybe, that if they just would have stayed with her father-in-law, they would have been much better off. If they would have stopped in Jebus, the implication is they probably would have been better off. You really can't be worse off. So if they would have just stayed with her father-in-law, yeah, they would have been much better off. Maybe they would have been able to patch their relationship together and thrive. Who knows? Her father liked this guy. That would have been the better option. They didn't go to enough marriage conferences. I guarantee you that. So, our heart has not fully broken yet. They knew her and abused her all night. The whole crowd did. Until the morning. God sees every detail of every sin that's committed. I can only imagine how he feels. We are aghast when we hear about the worst things that we could imagine. He sees every detail of every sin that's ever been committed. We couldn't handle the truth. He sees it all. And he, as David says in Psalm 51, against you only have I sinned, he's the ultimate and the chief victim of all of our sins. He's the offended party ultimately in any sin that's ever committed. This sin was against him more than it even was against her, as bad as this was. But this is, yes, sin against her. This is the worst thing we can imagine. One of them. Anyway, this is bad. They abused her all night long until the morning, and as the dawn began to break, they finally let her go. And as morning appeared, the woman came and fell down at the door of the man's house where her master was until it was light. And her master rose up in the morning, and when he opened the doors of the house and went out to go on his way, all right, I'm done, I'm going to go my way. Behold, there was his concubine lying at the door of the house with her hands at the threshold. She almost made it. And he said to her, get up, let us be going. Wow. Not, oh my, are you all right? What can I do? Get up, let's go. But there was no answer. Why was there no answer? She was gone. Whatever they did, it was so rough that it killed her. He put her on his donkey, and the man rose up and went away to his home. Now, there's only one thing to do in this situation, if you're this guy. When he entered his house, he took a knife, and taking hold of his concubine, he divided her limb by limb into 12 pieces. All right, okay. He cuts her up, the Hebrew says bone to bone. He chops her up into 12 pieces. Why? Okay, that's what it will be. As bad as this guy is, and I've made some case, I've gone to bat for some pretty wily characters in the scriptures. Saul, Samson. I'm not going to bat for this guy. Okay. There's one little shred of this guy that's like, something has to be done about this. Yeah, he should have done something about it before it ever happened. Now he's thinking, oh no, something needs to be done about this. I've been offended and wronged because of what happened to her. You're the one that tossed her to the wolves, dude. I'm going to chop her up into 12 pieces and send her throughout all the territory of Israel. I think the implication is 1 part to each tribe. I don't know what delivery service you get for that. Okay. But he sends a piece to each tribe. And all who saw it said, right reaction, although they're part of it because there's no king in Israel, everybody's doing what's right in their own eyes. Such a thing has never happened or been seen from the day that the people of Israel came up out of the land of Egypt until this day. Maybe there was some letter attached to the piece of like, this is what happened. How dare this happened? Fellows, we've gone too far. I don't know. There must have been some sort of communication associated with this because they react that they don't just see a body part, but I think there's some indication that like they realized what happened. Because they say, consider it, take counsel, and speak. What are we going to do about this? That's why he sends her pieces throughout the land so that something is done. That's the only potential glimmer of any sort of chivalry. I know it sounds weird, but he's like, something has to be done about this. Okay. And what we will see next week is, we've seen probably the ugliest sins that can happen. What we will see next week is life in Israel with no king spiral so wildly out of control that, you'll have to come back next week and see what happens. But that happened, that act took place in the tribe of Benjamin. Gibeah is a Benjaminite city. Okay. I think I have it in Judean Hills. I have a lot in Judean Hills. Gibeah, there's not much to see there. It'll be after Bethlehem, before. Anyway. Gibeah, it's interesting. You can go to Gibeah. There it is. Really, this is all you're going to see. The rest of the town is still, they've never really excavated Gibeah at length. They'd find a city under there, and you can go to the place where this happened, and you feel weird being there. Now, that palace was King Hussein of Jordan, 1967, left off building it because when Israel took back the land, they left it standing unfinished as a taunt to Jordan, saying, this is the farthest you're going to get building your palace here. And the reason why King Hussein wanted to build a palace at Gibeah is because who's from Gibeah? Israel's first king ever, Saul. So he's like, I'm going to build a palace where your king came from. And when Israel took back the land, they said, we're going to leave it unfinished. So you reminded that you're going to be reminded that's the furthest you ever got. But this is where it happened. And just being on this hill, you always get just your stomach churns because of what happened here in Judges 19. And this is such an awful story. And we joke about, it's teaching to the kids. There's a reason why you never go through this with the kids. Because this is just so many questions they would have that you don't want to address yet. But it really does just show the depth of depravity. It's awful. It's gut-wrenching what she experienced and what she went through because of everybody's doing what's right in their own eyes, trying to save their own skin, trying to set themselves up as sweet and cushy of a life in this world that they can. Nobody that we're seeing of this story here really is striving to follow the Word of God, to be controlled by the Spirit, and to live righteous lives. Any thoughts? Questions? All right. Father, we love you no matter how bad things get here in this world and no matter how ugly of sins even we commit. You are good, you are righteous, you are holy, and you are filled with grace. It's hard to imagine these things ever happening. It's hard to imagine things like this ever being forgiven. But you are so much more grace-filled than we are, and you forgive that which is beyond our comprehension to even think about. And we thank you for that. Because without your grace in our lives, we would be in this same place of the things we read about tonight. Yes, we too, our hearts could go to these depths, except for you and your work in our lives, and we give you glory for that. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.